here's what I would tell you. You want to make sure in your MSP you have a handle on what's called gross margin. And you should be at 45% to 50% blended gross margin. And that is revenue minus your cost of goods, which are your tools, your technicians, your software that you resell, the hardware you resell. And gross margin is what's left over after direct costs of whatever it is you sell. Okay. Now, I know it's a little complex. I'm not going to be able to get into an accounting lesson. So I'm just giving you just a general guideline. If you're, by the way, all members of mine, Toolkit, Launch, Accelerate, we have a lot of sessions about how do you figure out gross margin? How do you rate and calculate the profitability of each client? Those are longer sessions that, they're in depth. So if you don't know how to do this, you need to figure it out. All right. You have to have enough recurring gross margin to cover your nut. What I mean is 100% of your operating expenses and salaries. If you don't, you are in a very risky business. You want to make sure you generate at least 10% EBITDA, net profit, after a fair market salary. If you are at 10%, that's not setting the world on fire. Anything lower than 10% and your hair's on fire, right? You are in a very risky business. You need to fix that. If you're at 18% EBITDA, you're in best in class MSPs. And best in class MSPs are the top 25% quartile of MSPs. It doesn't have anything to do with your revenue or size, because you could be a $50 million a year MSP and you could be at the bottom in, like, not best in class. So it's not about revenue. Being best in class is about profitability, growth. All right. And we're going to talk about that when Paul, in the middle of this session, after the session, we're going to have Paul, Sissel, and I, we did a recorded session on this, and we'll talk more about these things and trends and whatnot. But 18% puts you in the top 25% best in class. You want to have at least 12% year over year growth. Anything less than that is really kind of fallen behind. Now, last year was a tough year for most MSPs. The growth was not where it should be, but it is starting to pick up. Okay. So I would goal at around 12% growth. There's a term called a gazelle. Now, a gazelle is a term to describe small businesses that are over $1 million in revenue. So if you're over $1 million in revenue and you're growing at 20% year over year growth for a consecutive period of 3 years, you're considered a gazelle. Or is it 4 years, Jeff? You have to I think it's either 3 or 4 years, but it's definitely 20%. You have to be at least $1 million in revenue, 20% year over year growth for 3 to 4 consecutive years, and you're considered a gazelle. So 12%, I would goal you at a minimum. Now, if you're real small, like if you're only doing $200,000 in revenue, getting to 400 or 500 is doubling that, is not that hard. That's why you're kind of excluded from that, because when you're small, getting those kind of big leaps is actually easier. And I know you're going to argue with me and say it's not, but trust me, it is. I've been there, and I'm like, 40 plus million now. So, trust me when I say when you're small, it's easier to grow. Anyway, so 12% year over year, diversified revenue. That means that no one client should represent more than 10% of your total revenue. And this is where a lot of MSPs get in trouble, is they don't have a lot of clients. They have one client that's a really big client, couple small ones. They lose that client, and now they're in dire straits. So that's another goal for you. If you don't have that, that would be a big initiative for the year. Another good goal would be to add one new MRR client per month per location. So if you have 2 locations, obviously try to add 2. I mean, if they're real close to each other, maybe one for both, but roughly about 1 new MRR client per month. And you want to keep churn to less than 10% of your client base. I don't think churn is bad. I think, if you're being smart about it, you should be churning some clients, because they're going to be wrong fit clients. No matter how diligent you are with discovery, qualification, doing all the things, I don't care how good you are still going to end up with a bunch of clients you don't like. Okay. So, and that are not a right fit. It's kind of like employees. I heard a stat the other day that in your hiring, if you make a good hire 60% of the time, you're world class. So, like, it's the same thing with customers. If you're going to get some customers that you're going to bring on board, and they're just not going to be a right fit. So I don't think churn's bad. The thing you don't want is you don't want to churn your best customers. You don't want to churn your high value clients, the ones that you like and want to develop. If you're churning them, that's a problem. If you're churning the looky-loos, the cheapskates, the pain in the ass, all those people, that's actually healthy because they're just holding you back anyway.